Hey everybody, this is Stefan, up in New York visiting my family. There's my little brother Shelby. There's Katerina, my little sister. There's the neighbor dog, Polly. And we're just out here playing some basketball. Oh man, that was a tough game. Anyways, so this week's topic is my genderqueer and pronouns. So I guess I'll start off with pronouns actually. I personally prefer male pronouns or gender neutral pronouns, just not female pronouns. Most people just call me he, but I'm also cool with people saying Z or they. Not so much into the other gender neutral pronouns, but Z and zer and they and their would be okay with me. One thing that I've been thinking about lately is gender neutral titles, like instead of Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. or whatever. I know a lot of people use MX and then pronounce it either mix or mixtrix or mistrix or all sorts of ways, but I'm not really sure how I feel about that yet, so I guess I'll go with Mr. even though it doesn't really sound right. It's like, oh no, I'm not Mr. such and such, that's my dad. Like, that's kind of how I feel about that. But I mean, the most important thing about pronouns is that you just use whoever you're talking about feels comfortable with. And if you don't know somebody's pronouns, like, just ask. I've never known anybody to be offended when you say, what pronoun do you prefer? I tend to, when I don't know somebody's pronouns, to say they, because it's gender neutral, but at the same time, it's not automatically outing them as gender variant, whereas I think if I said Z for everybody, then I'd have to explain it, and then they'd be like, oh, well, you know, do you just use Z all the time, or are they actually using Z? And yeah, I'm personally a fan of Z. I actually, my YouTube name and like some shirts that I made now say that's what Z said instead of like the oh that's what she said or whatever. So so I guess that's how I feel about pronouns. Now for what genderqueer means to me and how I experience my genderqueer. I think it's very similar to how other people think about it in a lot of ways. I really liked what Dylan said earlier in the week about it meaning freedom, and I think that's very, very true. There's so much, you know, pop culture and roles and everything associated with the binary of male and female that I don't believe that it's a binary, number one, and I don't believe that it's even a spectrum per se. I heard somebody recently say there's, you know, not a spectrum of gender. Each gender is like stars in the night sky. So there's not necessarily like, you know, male over here, female over there, and then, oh, I'm somewhere in between, but that it's like more three-dimensional, I guess, everywhere. So I firmly believe that there are as many genders as there are people in the world because everyone experiences their gender differently. Now, with that, I'm having a little bit of trouble defining genderqueer because if I believe everybody has their own gender, then how does being genderqueer differ from just being a non-traditional male or a non-traditional female? And I think a lot of that just has to do with the whole you know it when you know it, or you know it when you see it kind of thing. I know for me, I didn't really know what it was called until I saw the word and saw the definition, and you just automatically know, oh, that's me. It's, for me, the feeling of not being completely male or completely female, and then that translating into not being completely, like, woman or completely man. I had a pretty gender-neutral childhood, I think, in terms of, like, I mean, everybody, called me a girl and used she and stuff, but I really wasn't forced into certain gender roles. My parents would, make me wear dresses on special occasions and stuff like that, but then they even quit that when I was very much like, no, I hate dresses. My mom used to make all of our dress-up clothes for church and stuff like that, so it got to a point when I was, I don't know, maybe like 8 or 9, where she would start making vests for me instead of dresses that would match my sisters. So that was pretty cool that my parents were awesome enough to let me express myself how I wanted to. I think that that's very important, and that was one of the reasons why I really questioned my transness, was because I wasn't completely hating myself. Whereas I think a lot of people have very, very strict parents who force them into certain gender roles and are a lot more emotionally traumatized by their gender experiences when they're younger. So, yeah, and while I'm on the topic, I identify as both transgender and genderqueer, or genderqueer and transsexual. I kind of think that genderqueer falls under the branch of transgender, because transgender just means anything, any sort of gender expression that is, crossing the borders, or, like, which is, like, or non-traditional. So I think genderqueer is kind of a is like an umbrella term underneath transgender, but it could totally be the other way around. But, yeah, so I feel that even though I was assigned female at birth, that I'm more male than female, and so that's why I chose to transition to male-ish. But I also feel that I'm not completely either, so that's why I embrace genderqueer as well. Along with the whole freedom thing, I think that it covers a lot of bases as to why I behave certain ways and why I dress certain ways. And I identified as genderqueer before and after deciding to transition, and so I feel genderqueer is just kind of a part of me, and it kind of means fluidity as well. Whereas I could be a masculine female, and I can be a more effeminate guy and still be genderqueer, and that genderqueer covers any sort of expression I might have, even if that expression changes over time. So instead of saying I'm this one minute and then I'm that the other minute, I'm just genderqueer, and that covers every minute of every day of my life. And I feel that since it's such a broad term that nobody really agrees on definitions, and it's okay for everybody to have their own definition, that it's particularly suited to me because I don't really like labels, but it's really hard to go through life without labels. So it's useful to have some sort of categorization to let you know that you're not the only one thinking a certain way. But on the other hand, you don't want to feel constricted by labels. And it takes a lot sometimes to change labels, so it's easier to have a label that's more broad, and so that you don't have to be changing labels every 2 seconds. So I think that's another usefulness of being gender. So I guess that's it for now, everybody. Say bye. Bye. Bye.